That night, when my husband stood up in the middle of our daughter's graduation dinner and announced he wanted a divorce, everyone gasped, but not me. I smiled, slipped an envelope into his hand, and turned back to toast our daughter. If you wonder why I didn't cry, the answer was sealed inside that envelope. The restaurant looked like something out of a dream. Chandeliers dripping with light, white tablecloths crisp as snow, and the soft notes of a jazz trio weaving through the air. We had rented the private hall to celebrate my daughter, Olivia, valedictorian, scholarship winner, the pride of my life. I stood up to tell a story. My voice trembled, not from fear, but from holding back tears of pride. When she was 4, I said, smiling at Olivia across the table. She tried on my old college cap and said she wanted one of her own one day. Tonight, she finally has it. The table erupted in applause. Olivia blushed, biting her lip the way she always did when she felt shy. She was radiant, her eyes shining, cheeks pink, a young woman at the edge of her future. Then came the sound that cut everything in half. Clink, clink, clink. My husband, Richard, tapped his glass. He stood tall, his designer suit perfectly pressed, his smile broad and rehearsed. Family, friends, he began, his voice carrying like a politician's. First, congratulations to Olivia. She's worked harder than anyone I know. But I also have an announcement. After 27 years of marriage, Emily and I are getting a divorce. Gasps. Forks clattering. The jazz trio stumbled to a stop mid-song. Olivia froze, her face going pale. Dad? What? She whispered, her voice breaking like glass. All eyes turned to me, waiting for my meltdown, for tears, for a scene. But I had already done my crying months ago, alone, when no one saw. Tonight wasn't about him. Tonight was about her. I stood calm and deliberate. My heels clicked against the floor like a gavel striking wood. I pulled a cream-colored envelope from my purse and placed it in Richard's hand. For later, I said softly, tonight belongs to our daughter. Don't ruin it more than you already have. He frowned, confusion flashing across his face, but I didn't give him the chance to respond. I raised my glass toward Olivia. For every late night you studied until dawn, for every setback you turned into strength, for every dream you chased even when it scared you, this moment is yours. Applause filled the room again, hesitant at first, then stronger. My sister-in-law, Diane, caught my eye from across the table and gave me a small nod, as if to say, I know, I've got you. Richard sat down, the envelope tucked tightly in his fist, knuckles white. He didn't open it. Of course he didn't. He never faced anything head-on. Not problems, not responsibilities, not even the truth. When dessert came, Olivia leaned into me, whispering, Mom, what should I do? I feel like I can't even breathe. I smoothed her hair, swallowing the ache in my throat. Make your wish, sweetheart. Blow out those candles. Tonight you don't have to carry anyone else's pain. She closed her eyes, exhaled, and the candles went dark. The room cheered, though the laughter was shaky, fragile. I clapped the loudest, holding on to the sound like a life raft. Later, as we left the restaurant, Richard pulled me aside, his voice low and sharp. What the hell was that? Are you trying to control this divorce too? I looked at him, at the man who once swore he'd love me through anything, now standing there with lipstick on his collar that wasn't mine. No, Richard. I'm not controlling it. I'm just on time. With the truth. His eyes flicked to the envelope, suspicion and fear battling across his face. I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. Outside, the air was heavy with summer rain. Olivia's car pulled up, and she called out, Mom, come on. Let's go home. I shook my head gently. Not tonight. We're staying with Diane. My voice was steady, my decision final. Richard's jaw clenched. He didn't argue. Maybe because for the first time in years, he realized the power was no longer his. I slid into the car beside Olivia. Through the rearview mirror, I caught one last glimpse of Richard standing in the rain, finally tearing open the envelope. His face fell, like a man who just realized the ground beneath him wasn't solid at all. I leaned back, closed my eyes, and let the car door's soft click become the sound of my new beginning. And that, right there, was the moment my story truly began. People always say marriage is about compromise, but what they don't tell you is that sometimes compromise feels like cutting little pieces of yourself away, until one day you look in the mirror and don't even recognize who you are anymore. I met Richard when I was 22, fresh out of college, full of ambition and ideas. He had that kind of confidence that could light up a room. He wasn't rich, not even close, but he had dreams big enough to fill the sky. And I thought I could be the wind beneath those wings. Back then, I had a promising career lined up in finance. Numbers made sense to me. Spreadsheets, investments, growth. It was like second nature. But when Richard's first business idea fell flat, I told myself, it's okay, I'll pick up the slack. I worked late hours, took side jobs, made sure the bills were paid. I thought that's what love meant. And for a while, I believed it was worth it. There were good years, nights when we laughed until our stomachs hurt, Sundays making pancakes with Olivia when she was little, dancing in the kitchen with the radio on. Those moments were real. They're what kept me going. But as time went on, the pattern set in. Richard would chase a new venture, restaurants, tech startups, even a failed luxury dog clothing business. And every time he stumbled, I caught him. I dipped into my 401k. I refinanced the house. I told Olivia, don't worry, honey, Dad's just trying again. That's what dreamers do. Inside, though, I was tired. I remember one night, Olivia was maybe 12. She had a fever of 103. I was holding her hand, sitting on her bed, whispering that she'd be okay. Richard wasn't home. He was out with investors. My phone buzzed at 1 a.m. with a text, "Don't wait up." I sat there in the dark, with Olivia's forehead burning under my palm, and I realized I was both mother and father, nurse and breadwinner, anchor and sail. And Richard? He was a guest star in our lives, showing up when it suited him. Still, I stayed, because when you've built almost 3 decades with someone, leaving feels like tearing down your own house with your bare hands. But the worst wasn't the failed businesses or the missed dinners. It was the betrayals, the late-night calls, the unfamiliar perfume on his shirts, the sudden weekend business trips. The first time I confronted him, he laughed. "Emily, you're overthinking. You work too hard. Relax." And so I did what women are trained to do. I doubted myself. I told myself maybe I was too controlling, too serious, not fun enough. I worked harder, tried to smile more, planned romantic getaways he never showed up for. I became invisible to myself. Looking back now, I wonder how I lasted so long. Maybe it was for Olivia. Maybe it was because I was scared of starting over at 50, with nothing but a stack of bills and broken promises. Maybe it was because some small part of me still remembered the boy who once held my hand under the bleachers and swore he'd give me the world. But the truth is, Richard never gave me the world. I gave him mine, and he squandered it. By the time Olivia hit her senior year, I wasn't just his wife. I was his safety net, his investor, his cover story. And while I was busy holding everything together, he was busy slipping away into someone else's arms. I told myself, After graduation, I'll figure things out. Let her have her moment first. But life has a funny way of forcing your hand, because 3 months before that graduation dinner, I found the first clue, a bank statement, a transfer that didn't make sense, and suddenly, my 28 years of sacrifice didn't look like love anymore. They looked like evidence. They say the truth always comes out, but sometimes it doesn't just slip into the light. It claws its way out, tearing your heart open as it goes. That's what it felt like the night I realized my husband wasn't just failing me financially. He was betraying me in the most personal way. It started with a single bank statement. I wasn't snooping, not at first. I was paying the bills the way I always did. Richard had long stopped pretending he understood money, so every check, every mortgage payment, every tax return was on me. But that night, something caught my eye. A transfer, $5,000, to a name I didn't recognize. At first, I thought, maybe it's a vendor, a consultant, another one of his doomed business partners. But the name didn't sound like a company. It sounded like a person. I remember sitting there at the kitchen table, the glow of the laptop screen turning my hands pale. Olivia was upstairs studying for finals, and the house was so quiet I could hear the hum of the refrigerator. My stomach dropped. I wanted to believe it was nothing. God, I wanted that so badly. But deep down, a cold certainty began to bloom inside me. I didn't confront him right away. Not this time. After 28 years, I knew Richard better than anyone. If I asked him, he'd have an answer ready. A joke, a half-truth, some charming smile to make me feel like I was crazy. He'd been doing that for years. So instead, I went silent. I started watching. The next morning, he left for a meeting. His tie was crooked, his cologne heavier than usual. He kissed me on the cheek, and I felt my skin burn where his lips touched. Not from love, no, from disgust. When the door shut behind him, I sat at the kitchen table and whispered to myself, "Don't cry." Not yet. I opened his emails, the ones linked to our shared account. I knew his passwords. He wasn't careful, never thought I'd look. And there it was, a reservation, a fancy steakhouse downtown, 2 guests, dinner for 2, charged to our joint card. My breath caught in my throat. I scrolled further, hands shaking so badly I had to grip the edge of the table. There were messages, short but unmistakable. "Can't wait to see you tonight. Don't worry, she won't find out." Her name was Cassandra. I slammed the laptop shut, the sound echoing through the kitchen. I thought Olivia might come running downstairs, but she didn't. She was too buried in her textbooks to hear her mother's heart shattering into pieces. That night, I lay awake in bed, staring at the ceiling fan spinning slow circles. Richard came home late, the smell of wine and perfume clinging to him like a shadow. He slid into bed beside me, his breathing steady within minutes, and I lay there, eyes open, every nerve in my body screaming. I thought of the nights I worked overtime to keep us afloat, the vacations I canceled so he could fund his projects, the birthdays I spent alone because he was busy, and now, this. The next day, I made a decision. If Richard thought he could play me for a fool, he was wrong. I wasn't going to scream. I wasn't going to beg. I wasn't even going to warn him. I was going to watch, document, prepare. Because love makes you blind. But betrayal? Betrayal sharpens your vision like nothing else. I started small, printing statements, copying receipts, saving emails to a hidden folder. I even recorded a phone call one night when he stepped outside, his voice low and tender in a way he hadn't spoken to me in years. Hearing him say, "I love you," to someone else, it was like acid poured over my heart. But I didn't break. I transformed. Every night after Olivia went to bed, I sat at the kitchen table with my laptop, piecing together the puzzle of his double life, his lies, his arrogance, his assumption that I would never find out. The more I uncovered, the stronger I felt. Yes, there were tears. Sometimes I had to cover my mouth to keep from sobbing so hard the neighbors would hear. But underneath the grief was something else, something hotter. Anger, not the wild kind that makes you throw things. Number. This was cold, calculated, the kind of anger that waits, the kind that plans. By the end of that week, I had everything I needed: bank records, hotel receipts, emails, and proof of transfers that tied him directly to Cassandra. I remember standing in front of the bathroom mirror one morning, looking at my own reflection. My eyes were bloodshot, my face pale, but there was something new there too: a fire. For 28 years, I had been Richard's safety net, his rescuer, his excuse. But now I was going to be his reckoning. And it all started with one envelope. They say revenge is best served cold. But in my case, it wasn't cold. It was calculated, precise, and timed to perfection. Because when a man betrays you after 28 years of marriage, you don't just walk away. You make sure he knows exactly what he lost. After I gathered the evidence, the next step wasn't rage. It was silence. I didn't throw him out, didn't scream in his face, didn't pack my bags. Number. That's what he expected. Richard always thought I was predictable, soft, easy to manipulate. And that's where he underestimated me. One afternoon, while he was at a business meeting, I sat in my car in front of a downtown law office. My palms were sweaty on the steering wheel. For years, I had been the wife who smiled politely, who smoothed over his mistakes, who kept the family's reputation intact. Walking into a divorce attorney's office felt like stepping into a different universe. But the moment I shook her hand, Linda Grant, sharp suit, sharper eyes, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Power. I laid out everything: the financial transfers, the hotel bills, the emails. Linda listened quietly, flipping through the pages. Finally, she looked up and said, "Emily, you've done half my job for me." I almost laughed. Half her job? For nearly 3 decades, I'd done everyone's job: mother, father, banker, therapist, breadwinner. Now, finally, I was doing my own. "What happens if I file?" I asked, my voice steadier than I expected. "Well," Linda leaned back, tapping her pen, "you have a prenup. That's unusual in long marriages, but it works in your favor, especially the fidelity clause." My heart skipped. The fidelity clause. I remembered signing it when we were young, Richard insisting it was just a formality, that he would never dream of breaking it. I had laughed then, naively. But now it was the sharpest weapon in my arsenal. "If we prove infidelity," Linda continued, "you'll get the majority of the assets. He'll lose his financial standing. And with what you've shown me, Emily, we can prove it." I sat there, staring at her, my mind buzzing. For so long, I had been surviving, just getting through each day. And now, I could actually win. That night, Richard came home late again, humming as he loosened his tie. He poured himself a drink, oblivious to the fact that the ground beneath him was crumbling. I watched him from across the kitchen, forcing myself to smile, forcing myself to play the role of the faithful wife one last time. Inside, though, my heart was pounding. I had already filed. That morning, before walking into the law office, I signed the papers. The divorce petition, citing infidelity. The date, the very day of Olivia's graduation. A date Richard had promised Cassandra would be their new beginning. It was almost poetic. The weeks leading up to graduation were a blur of double lives. To Richard, I was still the same wife, planning Olivia's party, paying bills, folding his laundry. But behind closed doors, I was building my case like a general preparing for war. Linda coached me on every detail. I gathered copies of joint account statements, photos of hotel receipts, and even a recording of Richard's phone call where he told Cassandra, after Olivia's graduation, "I'll finally be free." Those words became my fuel. Every time doubt crept in, every time I wondered if I was strong enough to go through with it, I replayed that line, "Finally, be free, free from me." That was his plan. But mine was better. I made arrangements with Diane, my sister-in-law, to stay at her house once the papers were served. She didn't know the full story yet, but she suspected. She'd seen the distance between us, the lies. She promised me her spare room, no questions asked. Meanwhile, I rehearsed in my head what I would say at the graduation dinner, not to Richard, to Olivia, because no matter how much I wanted to expose him, I refused to let her night be destroyed. I wanted her to remember her father's betrayal as a footnote, not the headline. And so the plan was set. Richard would stand, smug and self-assured, thinking he controlled the narrative. He would announce our divorce like it was his idea, like he was the one leaving me behind. And that's when I would hand him the envelope that contained every page of evidence, every transfer, every receipt, proof that his perfect little fantasy life was about to collapse. In that moment, he wouldn't just lose me, he'd lose everything. The night before graduation, I lay in bed beside him, listening to his even breathing. My heart was calm for the first time in years. He thought I was asleep. He thought I was still his safety net, but I was already gone. And tomorrow, he'd find out just how much it cost him to underestimate me. When a man finally sees the truth he's been running from, it doesn't hit like a whisper. It crashes down like thunder. That's exactly what happened when Richard tore open the envelope I gave him at our daughter's graduation dinner. We got home late that night. Olivia went straight upstairs, exhausted from smiling through tears. I kissed her goodnight, whispered that I loved her, and promised we'd talk in the morning. She didn't need to carry the weight of what was about to happen. Not yet. Downstairs, Richard stood in the kitchen with a glass of bourbon, the envelope still sealed in his hand. His tie was loose, his hair messy from running his fingers through it. He looked nervous. I had seen that look before, usually right before one of his businesses fell apart. Finally, he ripped it open, papers spilled onto the counter. Bank statements, hotel receipts, screenshots of emails, and at the very bottom, the divorce petition signed with my name in bold ink. His face drained of color. "What the hell is this?" His voice cracked, the bravado gone. I stepped into the kitchen, arms crossed. My heart pounded in my chest, but my voice was steady. "It's the truth, Richard. The truth you thought I'd never find." He flipped through the papers, eyes wide, hands trembling. You've been spying on me?" I laughed bitterly. Spying? Number, protecting myself. Something I should have done years ago. He slammed his glass down, amber liquid splashing across the counter. "This is insane. You're blowing up our marriage over what?" I cut him off, my voice sharp. "Over the lies? Over the money you funneled to Cassandra? Over the nights you said you were with investors, but were in her bed instead? Which part do you think I'm blowing up, Richard?" For once, he didn't have a quick answer. His mouth opened, closed. He looked smaller than I'd ever seen him, a man caught in his own trap. "You blindsided me tonight," he muttered, shaking his head. "At Olivia's dinner? In front of everyone? I stepped closer, the heat rising in my chest. No, Richard, you blindsided me. For years, every lie, every late night, every dollar stolen from our future, you blindsided me. Tonight, I just took the blindfold off. His shoulders slumped. He picked up the prenup, flipping through it like a lifeline. When he reached the fidelity clause, his hands froze. You wouldn't. His voice was a whisper. I already did. I held his gaze, unflinching. The papers are filed. The judge will see everything. The prenup makes it clear. You broke your vow. You don't just lose me, Richard. You lose everything. The silence that followed was thick, almost suffocating. The clock on the wall ticked louder than usual, each second stretching into forever. Finally, his anger broke through his fear. You cold-hearted bitch. His words were venom, but weak. You've been waiting for this, haven't you? Just waiting to stick the knife in. I felt my lips curve into the smallest smile. No, Richard. I was waiting for you to hand me the knife. And you did. He cursed under his breath, pacing the kitchen. His perfect plan, leave me after Olivia's graduation, ride off into the sunset with Cassandra, start fresh, was crumbling right there under the fluorescent lights. Cassandra won't care, he said suddenly, desperate. She loves me. I tilted my head, pity flickering through my chest. Does she love you, Richard? Or the money you pretend to have? Because when she finds out you don't even control your own accounts anymore, we'll see how fast that love lasts. The truth hit him. I saw it in his eyes, the panic, the realization. For the first time, Richard wasn't the one in control. I turned to leave the kitchen, my voice calm but final. You should get some sleep. Tomorrow, Olivia deserves the father who shows up, not the coward who runs away. Don't ruin what little you still have left. He didn't stop me. He couldn't. Upstairs, I closed the bedroom door and leaned against it, shaking. My hands trembled, my chest tight, tears finally welling up. Not because I regretted it. God, no. But because the weight of 28 years had just slammed into me all at once. I sank onto the bed, pressed my palms into my eyes, and whispered to myself, it's over. Finally, it's over. But deep down, I knew it wasn't truly over. Not yet. Richard was cornered, and men like him don't surrender quietly. This was only the beginning of the war. Sometimes the deepest cuts don't come from strangers. They come from family, the people who are supposed to protect you. That night at Diane's house, my family was torn in half, and the truth spilled out like blood on the floor. I packed only a small bag, just the essentials: toothbrush, pajamas, a few clothes. I didn't want to look like I was running away, but I wasn't about to sleep under the same roof as Richard another night. Diane, his younger sister, welcomed us with open arms. Her townhouse was smaller than ours, but warmer, cozier. The kind of place where you felt safe. She handed me a blanket, hugged Olivia tight, and said, "You're staying here as long as you need." Both of you, Olivia dropped onto the couch, arms folded, eyes burning. She hadn't said much in the car ride over, but now the dam broke. Why didn't you tell me? Her voice cracked. Why did I have to find out like that? In the middle of my graduation dinner? I swallowed hard, the guilt pressing heavy in my chest. I wanted to protect you. I wanted you to have your night. I didn't want his mistakes to stain it. Her eyes filled with tears. But it still did. He ruined it. And you. She choked on the words. You let him. That cut deep. Because she wasn't wrong. For years I had let him. I had let his lies run unchecked, let his failures weigh us down, let his betrayals fester. And in the process, I had let Olivia grow up in a house built on cracks. I'm sorry. I whispered, my throat tight. I thought, I thought if I carried the weight, you wouldn't have to. But I was wrong. Her face softened just a little. She leaned into me, and for a moment, I thought maybe we'd have a quiet night. Just us, Diane, and the walls of her safe little home. But then the knock came, a hard, insistent pounding on the front door. Diane shot me a look, then opened it, and there he was, Richard, and standing right beside him, Cassandra. My stomach twisted. Emily, Richard said, his tone sharp, as if I was a runaway child. We need to talk. I crossed my arms, my heart hammering. No, not tonight. But Cassandra stepped forward, her manicured hand resting lightly on Richard's arm. Her voice was sweet, but her eyes were hard. Olivia deserves to know the truth. She deserves to hear both sides. Olivia stood, her face pale. The truth? She laughed bitterly. What truth? That my dad cheated on my mom with you? That's the truth, right? Cassandra flinched, but Richard jumped in, desperate. Olivia, it's not that simple. Yes, it is, she snapped, her voice rising. You've been lying to us. To me, to Mom, and now you show up here with her. Richard's face reddened. He pointed a finger at me. This is your fault. You turned her against me. You poisoned her. I stepped forward, my voice low but firm. No, Richard. You did that yourself. Every time you walked out the door at midnight, every dollar you stole from our account, every lie you told, you poisoned this family. For the first time, I saw Diane lose her composure. She slammed the doorframe with her palm. Enough! Richard, you don't get to storm into my house and blame Emily. You've humiliated her, and now you're dragging your daughter into it? Have you no shame? Richard spun, eyes wild, torn between defending himself and clinging to Cassandra, who now looked less like a lover and more like someone who'd realized she'd walked into a war zone. Olivia, he pleaded, softening his tone. You have to understand. I wasn't happy. I needed— No, Olivia's voice cracked like thunder. You don't get to use me as an excuse. Mom sacrificed everything for this family. And you were never even there. Her tears finally broke free, running down her cheeks as she pointed at Cassandra. And you? Don't stand there and talk about truth. You're nothing but a thief. You stole my father, and now you're standing in my aunt's doorway, pretending you belong here? You don't. The room went silent. Cassandra's lips parted, but no sound came. She stepped back, her face pale. Richard looked between us, his wife, his daughter, his sister, and for the first time, he realized he was outnumbered, alone. You'll regret this, he muttered, his voice hollow. I shook my head. No, Richard. The only regret here is yours. Diane pushed the door closed, the latch clicking into place like a final judgment. On the other side, I could hear Cassandra whisper angrily to him, could hear his muffled protests. Then, finally, silence. Olivia collapsed into my arms, sobbing. I held her tight, rocking her the way I used to when she was little. My heart ached, but for the first time in years, I felt a strange sense of peace, because in that moment, the lines were drawn. My daughter was with me. My sister-in-law was with me. And Richard? He was left outside, in the cold, with nothing but the ruins of his choices. I kissed Olivia's hair and whispered, We'll be okay. I promise. And for the first time, I truly believed it. They say justice is blind, but that morning in the courtroom, I swear justice saw everything crystal clear. And for once, Richard couldn't charm, couldn't lie, couldn't buy his way out. He was stripped bare. The courthouse smelled of coffee and nerves. Olivia sat beside me, her hand gripping mine so tightly I could feel the pulse in her palm. Diane was just behind us, her quiet strength like a shield at my back. Across the aisle sat Richard, expensive suit, polished shoes, but his eyes told the truth, dark circles, restless hands tapping on the table. And next to him, to my surprise, sat Cassandra, dressed in muted gray, like she hoped to disappear into the walls. The judge entered. Everyone rose. My heart pounded, but my face was calm. I had spent months preparing for this moment. My attorney, Linda, was sharp and unshakable. She laid out the evidence piece by piece, the transfers, the hotel receipts, the emails. Every document I had painstakingly gathered lit up on the projector screen like exhibits in a museum of betrayal. Richard shifted in his chair, his jaw tight. At one point, he whispered something to his lawyer, but I caught the flash of panic in his eyes. He knew what was coming. Then came the recording, his voice, soft and low, saying to Cassandra, "After Olivia's graduation, I'll finally be free." The courtroom went still. Cassandra's face drained of color. Olivia's nails dug into my hand. The judge leaned forward, his voice steady but sharp. "Mr. Thompson, your prenuptial agreement includes a fidelity clause. The evidence is overwhelming that you violated this agreement. As such, the court orders that the joint accounts be frozen until final division of assets. Furthermore, Mrs. Thompson retains provisional control of the marital estate until trial." My breath caught in my chest. This wasn't the final ruling, but it was a victory, a huge one. Richard's lawyer protested, talking about overreach and unfair punishment. But the judge shut him down with a simple wave. Mr. Thompson made his choices. This court is not blind to them. Richard's face turned crimson. He turned to me, his voice low and venomous. "You think you've won? This isn't over." I met his gaze, my voice calm. "It's already over. You just haven't accepted it." And then, the twist I didn't expect. Cassandra stood. She leaned close to Richard, but I was close enough to hear. "You didn't tell me this," she hissed. "You said you'd have money. You said we'd start fresh." Richard tried to grab her hand, whispering frantically, but Cassandra pulled away. "I'm not sinking with you." She gathered her purse, heels clicking like gunshots on the tile floor as she stormed out. Heads turned. Murmurs filled the courtroom. Richard sat frozen, abandoned by the very woman he had gambled his family for. For a moment, I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. The judge dismissed us. Papers shuffled, chairs scraped. I stood, smoothing my skirt, my knees trembling from the adrenaline. Olivia wrapped her arms around me, her tears dampening my shoulder. "Mom, you did it." "No, sweetheart," I whispered, kissing her hair. "We did it. We survived him." Richard stayed seated as we walked out, his shoulders hunched, his head bowed. The image of a man who had once stood so tall, so confident, now crumbling under the weight of his own choices. Outside, the sun was bright, the air sharp and cool. Reporters lingered, snapping photos, but I ignored them. All I could feel was Olivia's hand in mine, Diane's arm around my shoulder, and the steady beat of freedom in my chest. Later that night, I sat alone in Diane's kitchen, staring at the legal papers spread across the table. For years, I had signed documents out of fear, mortgages, loans, bailouts for Richard's disasters. But these were different. These were mine. I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was reclaiming. And Richard? He was alone, broke, abandoned. The empire he thought he had built was nothing but ashes. As I sipped my coffee, I thought of Cassandra walking away in those high heels. I wondered how long it would take Richard to realize that betrayal doesn't build new beginnings. It only burns everything down. For the first time in 28 years, I felt light because the fall wasn't mine. It was his. The day the judge read the final ruling, I realized something. Endings aren't always tragedies. Sometimes they're the first step to finally living. The courtroom felt different this time. Lighter almost. I wasn't trembling. I wasn't holding my breath. I walked in with my head high, Olivia beside me, Diane smiling proudly from the second row. Richard sat across the aisle, slumped in his chair. His suit hung loose, his tie uneven. He looked smaller, weaker, like the weight of his own mistakes had hollowed him out. The judge shuffled the papers, then spoke. After review of the evidence and testimony, the court rules in favor of the petitioner, Emily Thompson. Per the terms of the prenuptial agreement, Mrs. Thompson retains majority control of the marital estate. Assets, including the family home, retirement accounts, and business investments, will be awarded to her. Mr. Thompson's request for joint financial control is denied. My heart pounded, but I didn't let my expression crack. I just squeezed Olivia's hand under the table. The judge continued, "This ruling is final." The gavel struck. Bang. It was over. I turned my head just enough to see Richard's face. His eyes glistened, not with rage this time, but with something sadder. Regret. He leaned forward, his voice low, meant only for me. "I made a mistake. A terrible mistake. I should have chosen you. I should have seen what I had." For a moment, I saw the young man I'd once loved, the dreamer with the crooked smile. But that man was gone, buried under years of lies. I whispered back, steady and clear, "It's too late, Richard." He closed his eyes. His shoulders shook, but there was no comfort left for me to give him. Outside, the world seemed brighter, as if even the sky knew I was free. Olivia threw her arms around me, laughing through tears. "Mom, you did it. You really did it." "No," I said, smiling for the first time in a long time. "We did it." Diane joined us, her voice playful but warm. "Now, Emily, how does it feel to be the most eligible bachelorette in town?" We all laughed, the sound echoing down the courthouse steps. For once, the laughter wasn't a mask. It was real. Months later, my life looked nothing like the wreckage Richard had left behind. I started my own financial consulting firm, small at first, just me at a desk with a laptop. But word spread quickly. People trusted me because I wasn't just good with numbers. I understood sacrifice. I understood rebuilding from nothing. Soon I had a team, a real office, clients who respected me. For the first time in decades, I wasn't defined by someone else's dreams. I was living my own. Olivia called me almost every day from college. She'd laugh about her classes, complain about her professors, tell me she was proud of me. One night, she said, "Mom, you taught me something no textbook ever could. How to stand up when someone tries to break you." Those words meant more than any ruling, any dollar, any victory. As for Richard, I heard whispers. Cassandra was gone, of course. His so-called friends disappeared. He moved into a small apartment across town, working odd jobs, trying to keep his head above water. Sometimes, people told me he still talked about me, about how he'd lost everything. But by then, it didn't matter. His story was no longer mine. One evening, I stood on my porch, the sun dipping below the horizon, casting the world in gold. I breathed in the warm air, my heart light. For the first time in 28 years, I wasn't waiting for someone to come home. I was home. And I realized this wasn't just the end of my marriage. It was the beginning of my life. If you've stayed with this story until the end, thank you so much. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to hit like, share the video with your friends, and leave a comment to let me know what you think. And remember to subscribe so you won't miss the next emotional and dramatic stories.